Happy Monday morning to everyone. I hope you had a great weekend. Question, during the weekend, did you ever have any moments where you felt invalidated? Or did you feel seen, heard, understood, known? That's what we're going to be talking about today. The other thing is, do you feel like when you talk to somebody, do you feel like they feel seen, heard, and understood by you? That's a thing. Sometimes we don't know how often we are invalidating other people. And sometimes we're like, I don't know why it feels like I'm speaking Chinese and you don't understand and are validating me. So that's what we're talking about today. This is coming from a lot of different sources and reasons. Oh, by the way, I'm Ann Ferguson, and I am a communication and relationship specialist. So I help with the communication skills that we did not get so that your relationships are happy and positive. Comes from a Christian background. I'm super connected to God. I am a mindset coach, and really that's all this is. Switching our mind from the patterns and the understandings that we've had in the past that aren't serving us. Learning how to kind of let those go and get our mind connected to something else so that our relationships become safe. Who out there wants safe relationships? And what I mean by that is that you can say anything. You can express your opinion. You can express your experience, and you're not ridiculed. You're not criticized. You're not shut down, and you're not invalidated. Because that has been your experience, it might be what you do to other people. So that's what I teach. Igniting your belief is the class. We'll get more to that later. But first, we're going to do a feeling jar practice, because it all comes down to this. You cannot communicate what your experience is if you have no idea what you've experienced. Yeah. Are you ready? So what I know is this. Many of us know what emotions are because in the media, there's music that vibrates and it tells us what the emotion is. So we felt certain emotions. And even in books, there's a scene that depicts a thing and your heart races. I totally had this. I read a book this weekend. It was kind of intense, and I had all of these emotional responses while I was reading. And it's because I could watch the characters do a thing. That doesn't mean I know what I'm feeling. I knew what the characters were feeling. It's kind of an interesting thing. So we are learning what you feel like. All right, ready? Apathetic. Whew, when is the last time you felt apathetic? So for you guys who are not sure, some of these emotions, like we kind of know, but not really. You can always Google the definition. But apathetic is when you go, meh, I don't want to. I don't care that I should. I have no desire. Meh. Apathetic. When is the last time you felt apathetic? That's different than avoidance. Avoidance, there's a fear to it. Apathy, there's just a failure to thrive in a certain situation. So maybe it's money and you're apathetic to taking care of something. It can look like avoidance, but apathy is I just don't care. Last time I felt apathetic. I kind of felt it this weekend. I was not well this weekend at all. I was in bed most of the weekend, and could I have gotten up? Yes. Did it feel good? No. And I was actually kind of apathetic to whatever else was going on in the house. I just literally didn't care. It was just, I'm down for the count, staying in my bed. I actually read a book. That's rare for me to take that kind of time to read, but that's because I was kind of apathetic to what was going on in the house. Apathy. When have you felt apathetic? Like when people really, really want you to care and you just plain don't care. All right, let's do this a little easier. Ooh, this is good. When's the last time you felt heard? When is the last time you felt heard? This is an interesting one because me and my husband speak a different language on this one. What feeling heard is to me is completely different than what feeling heard is to him. This is all emotional literacy. So just like when letters are arranged in a way that you're not familiar with, but they're talking in a way that you don't know, that's just called a foreign language. We don't judge people because of a foreign language. So to judge somebody because of their different definition of an emotion than yours, it's just their perspective. It's just a different way of looking at it. So my husband's heard is when I'll say something, this happened this weekend, it's starting to get, we had to turn on the heat. I'm already living in a dry climate. It got really dry. And I said, oh my gosh, we need a humidifier because I can tell it's nasty. Anyway, he went to the store a day later, came back and had a humidifier. So he heard me that that's what I wanted. So to him, hearing is what somebody desires and they're providing, right? Providing that for them. Heard to me is that my perspective, my feelings about what I was experiencing is listened to. That to me is heard. So when is the last time you felt heard? Doesn't matter what that heard looks like to you. It is okay because it's your definition of heard. So go back into a memory for a second. When is a time when you felt heard? It's so good, right? When have you felt heard? Oh, I felt heard by a friend who just kind of said things that I didn't realize I was feeling. She just checked in, and it was so good for me. Okay, that is our emotional check-in for the day. What we're going to be talking about today is perspective. Okay, full disclosure, I was wrong, so wrong. Got into a fight with Tom yesterday, and I did not use these tools at all. At all. I shut him down. I did not hear him. I invalidated. Told him all the reasons why he was wrong. Yikes, right? So, what I think I would love to share with you is something about perspective first. And then about this feeling star thing. I had a question come up from somebody I was doing the feeling star with. It was this little family that came, had mom, my cousin, and her 4 girls, and we were doing the feeling star. And the teenager, the 16-year-old, came back and asked me a question. I'm going to get into that, about what that question was. But first, I want you to think about perspective for a minute. So I can be looking out my window in my upstairs bedroom, and my husband can be looking out the backyard. Same view, but he's down below. He's down with, I don't know, looking at the lawn, and I'm up in my window looking out, and there's an awning. We're both looking at the exact same thing, the same direction, same way, but I'm here and he's here. Not that I'm above him necessarily or that my perspective is better. It's just I actually have a perspective of the awning and the fact that it needs to be cleaned maybe. And he has perspective of the grass and that it needs to be trimmed. So we're looking at the same thing, and he's talking about trimming, and I'm talking about cleaning, and neither of us are on the same page. And it's like, what matters to me is the cleaning of the awning. What matters to him is the trimming of the grass. And it's like exactly the same thing that we're looking at. That's perspective. Is he wrong? No. By his perspective, that grass needs to be trimmed. Am I wrong? No. By my perspective, the awning needs to be cleaned. So what validation does is say, hey, can you come up for a minute and look through my window? I would love you to pause, just walk up the stairs for a minute and look. Or, hey, I want to come down and see what you're seeing. That is your responsibility, honestly. You can invite people into your perspective, but if you're noticing that contention, it's usually because somebody is feeling invalid or invalidated. And so coming down and saying, okay, can you show me your perspective, would be really helpful. So it's just taking a minute and saying, okay, from your point of view, from the way this went down, from all the filters of your past, relationships, programs, what is it that you're seeing? And based on those feelings, based on what you're seeing, what are you feeling? That's how we hear, we see, and we understand somebody. So, scenario. I'd been sick this weekend, in bed, and just wiped out. Yesterday I got up and I went to go unload the dishwasher. Well, I went to go take some lemon water and needed the lemon squeezer thing, and I couldn't find it in the drawer, so I'm like, oh, maybe it's in the dishwasher. There's a lot of dishes in the sink. I opened up the dishwasher. Dishwasher's clean. It's stuff that I had put in several days ago. So I took a deep breath, didn't feel good, and I went, whew. So I went and started unloading the dishwasher. Tom comes in and says, I told Jaden to unload the dishwasher. My perspective was he was judging me that I was doing it wrong. We haven't talked about this, so I actually don't know what his perspective was. I know what Jaden's perspective was. Jaden's perspective was I stepped over a bound because Tom had told me to do it. Anyway, it ended up that I got defensive because I'm like, it's okay. I don't understand why it's taken 3 days for these dishes to be unloaded in the first place. I'm just going to do them. He felt completely, I'm assuming, because I haven't gone down or up to his window. We haven't talked. My assumption is that he felt shut down because he was trying to get Jane to help me because I was sick. There's some past history in this. I reacted, he reacted. Jaden came down the stairs and looked at us both and went, So he sat and wrote during church all about his perspective. Jaden did. Trying to figure out. And then he goes, oh, actually, none of this was about me. I love that. I did not take the time to go, Tom, what is it that you are trying to do with asking Jaden to help? Because I could look at this several different ways. I can assume that it's because boy isn't pulling his weight around here. He needs to be the one to do that, not you. It could be, I'm trying to take care of you and have Jaden do it. I don't know all the perspectives, right? In my perspective, there's been times where it literally has been, Jaden do this, and Jaden will say yes, and Tom means now, and Jaden doesn't know it means now, and then there's a little thing that goes on, and, it's all about perspectives. So in the feelings jar, this is what I did not do, and this is what Tom didn't do. So when there was a negative feeling shared, we didn't go, okay, stop. So what you're feeling is this because of that. Checking back in and then saying, oh, well, that's good to know. Thanks for letting me in on that. And then taking the pause to go, and what does that mean to me? Neither of us did that. So the scenario with my cousin and her girls, a lot of the time that they were here, they had talked about their dad's really struggling with some health issues, and there's some invalidation going on as he's struggling and being made wrong for things that aren't wrong, and him not checking in to find out what's actually happening, but judging and condemning even though he's got no clue what's going on. He is not a bad guy. All of us do it, right? How many of you have ever done that? Totally did it to Tom. Not checked in, judged about what I perceived was happening when it wasn't really the thing. So we did the feelings chart. It's the first time that they had ever experienced sitting calmly and safely listening to each other without judgment, without ridicule, without fear or anxiety, because we weren't talking about an issue. So I would pull an emotion and say, okay, when's the last time you felt this? And everybody would go around and share when the last time they felt that thing was. And I watched, so there was a 16, 14, 10, and 7-year-old, and they loved it. And their mom was there. And so to share a couple things that they usually keep inside was kind of unique. And there's a rule that is really important about the lower vibration emotions. I say lower vibrations because our spirits are tuned to high vibration. And so anything that's lower, disappointment, fear, frustration, anger, sadness, those kind of things are not, there's literally a frequency. And they don't feel comfortable in our body, so we try to discharge it or swallow it. We're trained to swallow it. We're trained not to discharge it. We're trained not to talk about it. So in a lower vibration emotion, when somebody said something, I said, okay, here's what we need to do. When we share, all we say is, thank you for letting me know that that's what you felt in this situation. Especially if it's about something that someone else in this circle did. No apologies, no discussion, just, I'm glad I know. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds patronizing, thank you for sharing, and it is if you patronize. It's not if you go, okay, I have more understanding because they were willing to risk their vulnerability and share with me what the experience was. Now, none of this was in the heat of an argument, right? It's just like we just did. Like we can do it right now. Let me see. I got 2 more. Oh, ready? When was the last time you felt lonely? Now, if when I felt lonely is because last time I felt lonely, let's make something up, was because I wanted to have you go with me somewhere and you didn't on your own, and I didn't want to ask you because you rejected me about that before, and so I felt lonely. If you were to hear that, okay, if I'm going to say it to you, let's pretend I'm saying it to you. So last time I felt lonely was when I really wanted you to go with me to something that you knew that I love you going with me, and you didn't. You had time. There was nothing else going on, and you chose not to go, and I didn't want to say anything to you because I've asked you before and you've rejected me in that, but I still feel really lonely about that. If you were to hear that, what is your go-to response? Anyone? Shame. Do you know why you go into shame? This is why the biggest arguments happen. You go into shame because we have been trained that the way to show love is to feel shame when somebody tells you you've done something wrong. Because shame is the way to exhibit repentance. Guys, repentance is not shame. So we have to train our nervous system, literally our nervous system, that when we hear somebody's experience that maybe we had impact on them, we can't make anybody feel, right? But if we had negative impact on them, we feel shame. Why? Because we love them. We don't want to feel like we've done something that's hurt people that we love. When we feel blamed, that's because somebody has a negative thing and they're throwing it out there and you feel blamed and shamed because you did something. Guys, blame is never, 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 ever, ever helpful. Being aware of somebody's impact is not the same as blame. Blame says, I'm shoving responsibility to you instead of I'm making you aware that I experienced a thing and I want to talk about it so the thing doesn't get repeated. That's different than blaming. So the way to retrain this automatic response is by saying, thank you for letting me know that when I didn't go, you felt lonely. Can you imagine, guys, honestly, if somebody were to just say, so you feel lonely when I don't go with you to this thing, and you don't want to ask me to go, because I may have gone this time, but you don't want to ask me because I rejected you in your past. Is that right? Thank you so much for telling me. Notice there was no more conversation. Well, I mean, if you would have just done this, or, hey, I would have gone with you if you just would have said something, that's invalidating. Anything outside of, thank you for letting me into your inner world for a minute, almost everything else is invalidating. You can say, wow, that is really, really rough. I can see why you might feel that. Thanks for letting me in. That thank you for letting me in verbiage opens up safety and says, oh, it was like, okay. Why did this matter? I have been in relationship with multiple people that will say, we just need to communicate. We need to be, you're not a good communicator. Anybody else here that you're not a good communicator? This is a thing that happens. In my experience as a woman, this is what happens many times in expressing emotion to men. I am not saying that as carte blanche. I'm saying in my experience, I will say, okay, so this really, really bothered me because of this. Immediately shame crawls up their leg and they go, well, now I just feel bad. Like I was wrong for expressing that something had impact on me. And at the same time, I will squash that down and not say anything and not say anything. Why? Because I don't want to make them feel bad until it erupts and the psycho wench jumps out. And then they go, I don't know why you just didn't say anything. It's like you hold everything in and explode on me. No, actually, I might have said things and you invalidated my experience and refused to hear me. So when people say, you never listen to me. Kids, anybody got kids? You never listen to me. Ooh, that might be true, guys. You may be saying, well, I don't know why you feel that way. Or that's ridiculous, you know better. Or, well, if you just, then you wouldn't. See, on my post, I said, what does Triton have to do with all this? King Triton, Little Mermaid, I just watched the live, invalidated her curiosity about the world that she hadn't lived in. She was a very curious and adventuresome person. And so his, no, you can't explore, that was invalidating. He didn't say, hey, honey, show me all of these things you got and why you've got such fascination with the world up there. We do it to our kids all the time, you guys. Mom, I was feeling this, or this happened, and you can say, wow, oh, that must have been really scary, right? The reason why that matters is because when we don't have somebody who hears our perspective or what we felt, we feel very, very, very alone. When kids feel very alone because they can't share, because they're worried about the judgment or the anger or the disappointment or whatever, that's when we get into trouble. That's when that loneliness takes over and the bully kicks in and tells them to do stuff that harms them. There's a lot of people that use alcohol and drugs and pornography and other things to squelch the feeling of loneliness. Do you know that all that addiction is just because of disconnection? It's because we as a society have not actually been taught how to validate. So I'm going to go over this one more time. If there is something that somebody shares, especially if it's about you, it's so hard not to have the shame bug crawl up you. But if you just go, hey, I hear you, and thank you for sharing. I need to process this. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. I've had to do that a couple times where the shame was too big and I couldn't shelf it. I couldn't go, hey, shame, put over there because I got to stay present. And I just had to say, okay, I need to process this for a minute. And then I'll get back to you. So this is what happened. I told this little group, this little family, I said, okay, even if it's something that you have had impact on, just say, thank you for letting me know that. Don't apologize right then. That was so I don't understand. Why wouldn't I apologize? If I know that I've done something wrong now, why would I apologize? Because you actually haven't given time for the validation that what they felt is what they felt. Whether you meant them to feel that or not, whether their perspective about your motivations were wrong or not, doesn't matter. Sitting in the validation and go, oh, they heard me, is what's necessary. So the 16-year-old ran back in the house and she goes, okay, do you ever apologize? I know in the moment we're not supposed to, but do you ever apologize? I said, absolutely. When it's time, give a little bit of time to just go, you know what? This is great. Thanks for sharing with me. After you've given a little bit of time, you can then go back a couple hours or a couple days later and go, hey, when you told me about this, can I share what my experience of that was? Because I think we've got a little bit of a misperception, disconnect thing going on. We're looking at the same thing, but we're seeing it from different perspectives, and I'm not saying you're wrong. So basic language is just, hey, can we talk? I heard you, that this is what you felt. I never intended. And here's the big thing. I'm glad I'm aware. Can we talk about what to do moving forward? See, the reason why we want people to take responsibility is not because when people take responsibility, does it heal our hearts? Do you ever had somebody say sorry to you and you're still stinging and it doesn't actually let go? That's because the only one who can heal that is Christ. It's not who's done something wrong. Why we want people to take responsibility is because we want them to go, oh, so when I did this, based on your perspective and the things that were going on in you, you felt that. Now I'm aware. What can we do to change this? So I have someone in my life who is very emotionally mature. When we don't have emotional vocabulary, you're not humanly immature, you're emotionally immature. I have somebody in my life who's pretty emotionally mature, and she came to me and said, okay, I kind of feel like I'm second. Like I'm supposed to be this in your life, and I just feel like I'm not. And I have this thing in me that says I'm going to be replaced and somebody else is going to show up better. And I feel that because of this situation, that's what's happening. And so I just need to tell you. Now, immediately, what happens? Guys, shame is going to happen. Shame crawls out my leg. Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I suspended the shame for a second. I went, okay, so what she's telling me is she's had times in her life where she was upfront and helpful, and then somebody else came in and she was dethroned. That would suck. That would suck. And she's feeling that again, and based on what has happened, I can totally see why that's the perspective that's going on. I see this. Wow. What happens is that because of my awareness of that, now, if someone else comes into life and says, hey, I can do this, and I can do that, I can do this, I am now very aware that being replaced is a thing. And so because of that awareness, I can go, you know what? I am going to check in with so-and-so, and I'm going to see how this plays out. And I'm so excited about the fact that you want to help, and I love you, and we can do this. But I protect that wound, whatever that wound is, that caused somebody to be replaced. I didn't own that I replaced, because that was never my intention. It wasn't a, oh my gosh, I can't stand this person, I've got to get somebody else in here and maybe she'll just finally go away. That was the bully that was telling her possibly that was what was going on. So I didn't own that, but I did see that my behavior can impact and trigger that wound in somebody else. And so me taking accountability and going, I can see why this equaled that to you. That's not what I want. So when we're asking people to acknowledge and take responsibility, that's why. We just don't want them to repeat it. So we're trying to communicate, but we've been told we're not supposed to, because then that'll make somebody feel bad. And so then we're not actually heard or seen or understood. And we walk around this world being emotional and lonely. So, step one, my friends, is emotional vocabulary. The question that came up that spurred this one on today, this validation thing, is, okay, if I validate and I have found out that there's something that I have done that has contributed to these lower vibrations, and I say that very carefully, guys, I didn't make them feel, but I contributed to the emotion that they were having. Do I say sorry? And how do I do that? Yes, but not in the moment when we're doing the feelings jar. It's really, really cool to play around because everybody pulls out a strip, everybody pulls a different one, and they share. Let me tell you what happens. Immediate connection. And it's safe vulnerability. So if you want to keep it really safe, keep only the positive emotions in when you're doing a dinner party, right? Dinner party. All the positive emotions, you go, when's the last time that you felt this? And then immediately everybody is connected in a new way. Even that difficult person that usually has the drama. Guess why people have drama, y'all? Guess why they're kicking up drama? Because they're not seen, heard, or understood. Anyway, we're wrapping up. Validation. If somebody's got drama, it's because they're not heard. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.